Hello, hello. I hope everybody can hear me. I'm still adjusting to our new setup here after having 10,000 people a couple weeks ago. Tyler, yo, Kai, Kenny Blum, look, he actually joined this week. Ty again, 131. No way, man. I've been here since before that. Mario, skies out, thighs out, baby. You know it. What up, Medina? Mr. Tony, Captain Tony. What's up, Jake? Happy Friday, homie. Yeah, happy Friday to you too, man. Yo, what up? Dave, yo, Dave. You got good news this week. I hope you're stoked. I saw your guitar had cleared customs. I hope that it arrives soon. I should have checked the tracking before the live stream, knowing that you'd probably hang out. Because I would be curious if it arrived even today, maybe. That would be sick. You'll have to let me know, though, because I definitely want to know what you've got going on. Oh, really? Can you not hear me, Dave? Can nobody hear me? Am I inaudible? Tyler, you can hear me talking, not just me riffing. I can hear you just quiet, okay. That should be a little better. Also, Dave, now I'm recalling your guitar because you made me look like an asshole. No, what up, everybody? Happy Friday. Today is a glorious Friday. Not for any other reason than we're all here and we're all alive. What do you mean, of course we can? Like I could have known that. I don't see levels. I only see the monitor. Although bigger monitors would now be there. I don't know, man. Maybe you're great at reading lips. I don't like to give anyone too hard a time. You could be an expert. You could be an expert at reading lips. That you could work for the British government. You could be a retired RAF soldier who reads lips as an expertise. SAS or something crazy like that. I don't know, man. But happy Friday, everyone. Thanks for dropping in. As you can see, I am all on my lonesome today. Mr. Joseph Balaguer is spending time with his familia, so he is out of the office right now. But I took it upon myself to do a couple of cool things, some ironic, some maybe not so ironic. I'm sure everyone here read the title, because who watches a video without reading the title? I'm hoping to get a lot of input today, because this is a topic that I've seen come up a lot lately. Many of you can, I'm sure, guess why. And it continues to be a topic. So I thought it was kind of an interesting, it felt like a good time to chat about it. I have opinions about it. Joe has opinions about it. I'm sure all of you have opinions about it. Retired MI5 agent, there you go. Jake's about to tell all the secrets today. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a no holes barred type conversation. I promise I will be completely honest with you, as I always am, but I promise I will do it again today. An AI show, me puts on hazmat suit, I'm going in. Yeah, it feels that way. Gianluca, yo, what up? How's it going, dude? Thanks for dropping in. So in preparation for that conversation, I thought I would play, somewhat ironically, one of the most analog rigs that I have. I'm running through my analog pedal board, which some of you have seen photos of before in the group. If you haven't, go look it up. I'm running through my Marshall 1959 hand-wired over here. I'm playing my baritone Espada, my 27-inch baritone. It's in B standard. And it has a mastery trim. It has bare knuckle Abraxas pickups in it. A solid maple top, flame maple top. Yeah, it's a sick guitar. For anyone who's curious, I'm running that whole intro bit and maybe more later today because I'm really digging it. I have the overdrive side of the Royal Jelly kicked in on top of the Marshall with the Belle Epoque, Catalan bred Belle Epoque delay on. Those are the only two pedals on. And yeah, it sounds absolutely ripping. An AI show. Oh, we already got that. Yeah, you got the good Espada today. Oh, Jesse, yo, what's up, dude? Thanks for dropping in. We're going to talk about absolutely nothing controversial, so it's a good thing you decided to drop in today. Now, how to talk about AI without getting political? Impossible, probably. But that's okay. While we try not to politicize too much at BG, we certainly have opinions, and being political is part of being alive in the world. So, to a certain extent, it is okay. The answer to the title is yes. We'll get to that because I'm not so sure. Spoiler alert. And Brian, with a take already, I think the levels to which AI exist are misunderstood. We likely have been using some version of AI without knowing it for a while. First off, absolutely true. There's no way that these companies weren't implementing that stuff beforehand, even if it was just as like filtering or whatever. But we'll get into all that. So the question for today's live stream is, can art be bad? I feel like this is an interesting one. It's this conversation, that question specifically, is half philosophy, half, probably more than half philosophy, and some portion opinion, right? Totally subjective. The reality is no art is objective. So, you know, like, I think universally art cannot be objectively bad, but there's a reason that it's in quotation marks in the title, which is, can art be so just disapproved of or disingenuous or any of those things where then it becomes bad in quotation marks, not because it as art is bad, but because the intent behind it is bad? I think that's a very interesting interesting topic of conversation, and everyone has different opinions. So I thought, why not? Let's blow it up. Light the internet on fire. Who cares? We don't need the internet anyway, right? And I'll start with Brian. I already read his comment, but I think it's an interesting take, which is that we all think AI is one thing. Maybe it's something else. Is there a likelihood that we've been using it for a really long time and we just don't know it? Yes. Is ignorance sometimes bliss? Totally subjective? Maybe so. But I think more to the point of, have we been using it? I don't know why I put that in quotes. More to the point of, have we been using it, I think is how all of these things impact the world, people in it, art specifically in this context. And I find it interesting. So if you have a comment, drop it. If you have an opinion, type it, right? This is the internet. You can say whatever you want. Worst case scenario, we dox you and you get beat up because your opinion is bad. No, I'm just kidding. Obviously, there's no, we're just chatting about it. It's a safe space. I'm just kidding. I just hate the idea of people spewing trash on the internet and having no consequences. But this is not one of those things. I'm sure everyone will be civil and have reasonable opinions, whether we agree or not. So let's jump right in. Tyler, I do use a little AI when tone chasing. It's not perfect, but being in a cover band, I'll ask for certain tones for my helix, and it will give a great starting point to tweak. So that's an interesting one. As someone who builds a lot of tones, I'm sure, I know Kai will have a lot of experience here. I know there are a lot of people who, Kenny Blum, another one, people in the chat who will have experience building tones in the digital realm, or in the physical one, or in some combination thereof, where, I remember the first time someone showed me that you could type in whatever into some AI thing, build me a quad cortex preset for this. And it populated all the settings and everything. And I was like, whoa, that's wild. I don't think tone crafting is an art 100%. If you're trying to cop tones like that, or looking for a starting point, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Again, I should disclaim this conversation. The disclaimer here is that AI exists, right? It's not going to not exist. There's probably someone, and I'm looking at you, Jesse, with his "what the fuck is the internet" comment, which is a fair comment. Like, some of us might just say, well, AI should just go away, all of it, eliminate it. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I am saying that's not really pertinent to the conversation right now. What I'm really looking for is like how it affects everything. So using a little bit of AI for like research as a data processing tool, or as a way to compile information, which is essentially what you're doing, Ty, right? You're taking all of this wealth of knowledge from the interwebs and the world in general and combining it into a sort of research project for tone. I don't see anything wrong with that. Again, outside of the conversation about AI as a whole, like as a use, assuming AI exists and it's available, then I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't think that's cheating. Personally, I like to hunt. I like to know all the answers and dive deeper and deeper and deeper. And eventually AI hits a wall and can't help you do that. So it's not like it replaces the journey. Um, so I'm kind of cool with that. Not kind of, I am cool with that. Gianluca says, I think of the rule in music theory sometimes in regard to the whole sub-objectivity of art, which is that there are no rules, only context. Excellent. You get a gold star. I think I think that's an excellent way to look at it. I think another way to look at it, which is basically the same thing, but it's just the one that's ingrained in my brain from when I was a kid, is Eddie Van Halen. Someone asks Eddie Van Halen, you don't know, you're not classically trained, you don't know music theory necessarily, but like, how do you write all this stuff? And he says, well, if it sounds good, it is good, right? Context. If you're writing the next great jazz album and you don't know any theory, there's a chance you're starting on the back foot. Doesn't mean you need it. If you're writing for an orchestra, there's a chance you're starting on the back foot. Doesn't mean you need it. But I think in terms of like the general vibe, when you look at subjectivity and objectivity, I agree. Most of it is lawless. There are no rules. It is only context. And all of, for example, theory, if we're looking at things that are sort of in the sphere of things we're talking about, lots of people will use AI to teach them theory or learn theory, or instead of it being like, here's whatever, here's a Phrygian dominant scale, you play it in this case. AI could be like, hey, I've generated 4 examples where you can use Phrygian dominant. Like, that's kind of sick, right? As a learning tool. I think an interesting avenue there, which I think is an interesting avenue in general when you consider music as art or any communal art, because I would say that music, as much as people like to give it a hard time for being an internet thing nowadays, music is largely communal, right? You learn from other people, or you learn from seeing other people, or you learn from experimentation that is then either validated or eschewed by other people. You play in a band, you play with other people. Even if you play to a track that you write, if you're playing it for people, you're playing with people, even if they aren't musicians. And there's an argument to be made, and I think a reasonable one, for the tradition of it all, right? Like, you might be doing something new, but it's all built on the shoulders of people who came before you. So, for me, a big red flag is when someone's like, this is totally new and unique and crazy. Like, no, it's just not. It never is. I'm going to come back to the Eddie Van Halen example. Dude's a generational talent, the kind of guitarist that, whether you like Van Halen or 80s metal at all, reinvented what the guitar was at the time. No one had ever done that the way he did it. But he copped that from watching Jimmy Page play live and watching him do the Heartbreaker thing when he's doing like all that stuff, or so he said. And like, right? How do you not acknowledge the fact that it's a through line, right? You play blues, you play jazz, the oldest traditions of music, and being part of the tradition is just as important as the music itself. And I feel like music as a whole falls into that category, right? Where you're part of something way bigger than yourself. Even if you're a selfish prick, you still are part of something bigger than yourself, whether you want to be or not. And I think the people who can contextualize that, to again use your point, often have the best perspective, or I don't like the word best, often have a more comprehensive, more universal contextualized perspective. But that's a good one. Mario says spell check was probably the first AI people use. It's been here all along. Yeah. Unfortunately, I mean, spell check rules as like a spell check tool. I feel like, interestingly, and this is a bit away from the topic of music, but as someone who has always enjoyed reading and writing, and as someone who prides themselves on being able to write well, what a lot of these LLMs are able to do is absolutely nuts. Like, in a way, it hurts my feelings, but I have to separate that emotional reaction from the reality, right? That only makes it more subjective. But I do think it's interesting that, you know, it's like tattoos, right? If anyone in this chat is over the age of 35, maybe 40, I'm going to say 35, you'll remember a time when getting tattoos was taboo. I'm going to say in the United States. I don't mean worldwide, but in the States, like when I was a kid, you didn't just get tattoos. It wasn't a thing. But I got one when I was 18 with some friends because it was like, hell yeah, we're badass rock stars. We're going to get tattoos. And people looked at you funny. Now tattoos are way more normal. And a part of me is like, man, I kind of wish it was still a little more rebellious. But at the same time, I'm just stoked that people are into it because it's something cool and creative and like I'm into it, right? I think you have to balance those two things out. I think that's important. And I think that this is similar. Anything subjective is like that, right? And music, if you've spent your 5,000 hours, as the saying goes, becoming excellent at a thing, in this case, let's say playing the guitar, and then someone is able to replicate that with no work, like that doesn't feel good, right? Now, whether it feels good or not doesn't mean it's bad. But I would argue that if you're literally just prompting and things are being pumped out, like you can say, oh yeah, that sounds cool. And I'll put this on the internet or whatever. But I don't think that's the same thing as writing, which I think is a core of a lot of the conversation that a lot of people have, is that you're not writing something, you're encouraging, prompting, you're creating the path, you're guiding, whatever word you want to use, rather than it coming from nothing, from you. However, to my earlier point, how can something come from nothing if you're standing on the shoulders of giants, right? So I see there's a line there, and I see that if you want to get really semantic with it, it's a difficult thing to talk about. But I also think, again, and Gianluca, you're really crushing it today because the context is so important, right? Like it just is. It's everything in this case, which is if your intent is to create sick art and you spent the time learning and you put it out there, even if I hate what you're doing, I might be like, wow, this is the worst music I've ever heard. But at least you did it yourself, right? Like that, I think that's deserving of inherent respect, where it's like, oh, I beeped and booped my way and this music was vomited at me. Like that's not the same thing. Even if you can draw semantic parallels that don't make them objectively bad or objectively wrong, I think contextually, they're not the same thing. It doesn't mean bad or wrong, in my opinion. The intent is not bad or wrong. The intent is just what it is. But contextually, I would say one is more valuable than the other. Maybe that's one way of looking at it. Oh no, my thing jumped. I jumped like 6 comments. Hold on. I swear to God, I'm finding something. One of the best descriptions I've heard is AI is a fancy text predictor. So yeah, we have been using it for quite some time. Yeah, not wrong. Anthony says, I'm glad there's rules set and laws that AI music can't be monetized. However, someone could write with it, recreate it, and upload it. But I think you could tell if it's genuine. So this is an interesting point because I would argue there aren't enough rules and protections around what this stuff does as a whole. However, it is also monetized. Like people are able to make money off of this stuff by being sneaky. And I don't mean like literally just AI chatbot copying Ola England's songs and putting them up. That's horrible. And like, wow, you've got to be a real freaking piece of trash to do something like that. Because that's just straight up plagiarism. Like, not even in the contextual AI conversation of plagiarism, but that's like actual black and white plagiarism. Um, More interestingly, you say you think you could tell if it's genuine. I don't believe you. Or let me not say that. I believe you. I don't believe you could in every context. I don't believe anyone could in every context because of how cool music production has gotten and how much you can do with all this digital stuff. I don't think that anyone could guarantee that. I also think it's interesting that some companies put the onus on the listener. Oh yeah, if they want to listen to real music, they can go listen to it. They don't have to listen to this. Okay, but putting the responsibility, the onus on the listener to know the difference when the entire point is to create something that's as accurate as possible. I think at that point, then the intent is bad. Like you're intentionally misleading people. And at that point, you're an asshole. Just my opinion. Uh Jesse again with the internet. Yep. Brian says likely you have to set your own threshold for comfortability with the tools at hand. Where does it become unethical? Generative AI does have to learn from somewhere. That's a fair point. I think it's a very fair point. I think, like many things, when I think of thresholds of comfortability, I think of thresholds of safety too, right? Like, I ride motorcycles. Do I ride with a helmet on? Yeah. In Pennsylvania, is it legal for me to ride without a helmet? Yeah. Do I think people who ride without a helmet are kind of dumb? Like, yeah. Sorry to anyone in chat who does that. Like, I don't know why you would do that, but I also do get it. Like, I grew up in Louisiana learning how to do all of this stuff with no helmets, no pads, no anything. And there are times when I'm wearing my helmet when I'm like, man, I really don't want to be wearing this helmet right now. It's 95 degrees outside. And I'm sweating through my helmet. And that sucks. But again, thresholds of comfortability. You have the choice. In my opinion, in the same way that states can say, you should put on a seatbelt, you should wear a helmet, there are also laws against intentionally misleading consumers. And I think AI often falls into the category, if you look at the intent of the people who create it, as being disingenuous, as misleading intentionally. And I think those people have to be held accountable, and AI as a whole has to be regulated to some extent, whatever that is. I think it's more than now, more than how it's regulated now, but that's a fair point. And where does it become unethical? Again, ethics, right? You take an ethics class to try and inform your context. It is not black and white most of the time. It's a spectrum. Sometimes there are things that are objectively bad. Intentionally misleading someone for the sake of making profit is bad. Documented, it has been documented, that is something that these people do. But I mean, everyone in this chat has at some point misled someone for their own gain. So again, all of this can be turned into like a semantic cesspool, but I think we're trying not to do that, to provide the context and to put some things on it, some guardrails on it. Maybe guardrails is not a fair word. Some guidelines around it. Kai says, I use a minimal amount of AI in my workflow. More often than not, the output sucks, but it can be a good springboard to think for myself. Yeah, right? I mean, I think that's fair. You use something to just sort of push you in the right direction, or if your intent is not to monetize it and not to do anything with it like creatively, but you want to demo a product so you have AI put a track together, like, to me, that's a gray area. Someone could say they don't like that, and I think that's fair. I would say it's reasonable, right? Like, to me, if we have access at Balaguer to, and this is going to get into another part of this topic, we have access to all of these tools. We can record all of this stuff. We have a drum set that you can't see. Can't see. But we can't record that drum set. We don't have mics for it. We don't have that stuff. So, like, if I'm using AI to create a drum beat, even if I'm recording the rest, Is that any different than me using programmed drums? Right? Like programmed drums is a skill. There are people who are very good at it, like to the next level good at it. So I think some credence has to be given to those who use it as a tool like that with no intent with no intention to mislead anybody. Like this is just a demo track. I went into whatever and said, write me a metal track in the key of C, and it writes a track. You use it to riff over and demo a pedal or an amp or something in a mix. Like, is that any different than using a software that would pump it out that has those things plugged in already? Again, in my opinion, like on the surface, no. But when you look at the intent, I think things start to change. And that threshold of comfortability that Brian was talking about becomes more important because you're looking at, okay, am I even comfortable using this thing that also does all these other things that I don't like because it works for me in this specific context? I don't think there's a right or wrong answer there, but I think it's interesting. And I think that also leans into the conversation of people will say, well, I use AI to do the things that I can't do, like to fill the gaps in what I want to do. Maybe I'm a guitarist, but I have no drum set, so I use it to create drums for me. Maybe I want to learn something, but I can't afford the classes, so AI can help teach me. Risk of getting it wrong, risk of getting it wrong, set aside, because that's a big caveat with AI in general. Like, can I be mad at someone for wanting to learn? Is that any different than going on a Wikipedia article, which is essentially all human knowledge amalgamated into a single web page? Like, again, on the surface, no, but the intent behind the tools might be different. Kind of an interesting perspective. Kenny Blum says, oh, wait, sorry. I jumped ahead. Sorry, Ken. Kenny says, I've never used AI to build my tones. I've definitely used YouTube to help use the QC, though. Yeah, 100%. And that's the thing. As an educational tool or as a springboard, I don't think that's an objectively bad thing. Again, I'm going to keep coming back to this disclaimer. The disclaimer is AI already exists, right? Like it's there as a tool. Do you use it? Do you not? And some people will say, well, if you don't use it, you're falling behind. I would argue that's a very oversimplified perspective, but I get the point. And yeah, Ken, I mean, how many songs have I learned from YouTube? How many, and I like to think I have a pretty good ear, but it speeds the process up. If I want to learn something complicated, I went to university for engineering, but I watch engineering videos on YouTube because I still find it interesting. Like, is that wrong? Right? Again, it can be a semantic game, but I don't really think that's what we're talking about. We're more talking about the intent and the context. Anthony says, I feel eventually music will go back to being simple due to AI music. I haven't even thought about using it to build something in the QC. Yeah, I mean, you might be right. Everything is cyclical. Every style is cyclical. Every approach is cyclical. Whether it's, the kids these days wearing 90s styles, and I'm kind of laughing at myself because I'm like, wow, all right, Jennifer Aniston, like, cool. Which, shout out to Jennifer Aniston for being awesome. But I'm just saying, like, it all comes back around. I hope that you're right from a standpoint of, I hope that people care more about seeing music live than they do now. It's a shame that it's because it will be because they can't trust what they hear. That sucks. And going back to the intent of it all, right? Like if your intent is to create music that you didn't write, like are you creating at that point? You're creating something. Is what you're creating what you say you're creating? Are you self-aware enough to know the difference? That's that comfortability threshold again. I will say I'm super stoked that I'm able to use things like context and comfortability thresholds and all this stuff. You guys are really killing it. I'm really happy that we're talking about this now. I was worried, as we always are, that this would just devolve, but this is pretty sick. So shout out to all of you for being awesome and having good perspectives. I read the manual and watch. Yeah, exactly. You can't do that. AI is used for so many things. It's become popular because of deep fakes and art in general, especially bad band flyers. Yeah, right. Like that's the meme. I'm not going to your shitty show with your shitty AI flyer, right? For what it's worth, I agree, right? Like, I don't have a problem if you don't have Illustrator or Photoshop or whatever, and you want to create a really advanced looking flyer and you use AI to do it. Do I think that's objectively bad? No. Would I rather you just draw it in MS Paint? Yeah. Because at least then I know you're like it's you, right? And I think that's context. Neither is objectively good or bad, but one makes me care about the thing more because it shows me that you care about the art, you care about what you're producing, you care that it's original, that it feels real and is real. And I think that's important. No art can be bad, Kai says, provided that you exclude a art from being defined as art. Interesting. Um, I think it's fair to say that AI art is not art, period. It doesn't mean it can't be cool. It doesn't mean it can't be artistic, but I don't think it's art. I would agree with you there because it can't. I think by definition, art has to come from an original place. I'm sure if there's a niche case where that doesn't apply, let me know. But in my off the cuff opinion, it seems like it would have to be from a unique place. That's what makes it art. That's what makes it real. AI art is not original, therefore it cannot be art. Um, and I would agree with you in the first case that I don't think any original art is bad. Period. I might not like it, doesn't mean it's bad. Um, I think that's a great point. Mario says, I dislike. Oh no, I keep jumping through the chat. There needs to be a better way to do this. I dislike when people paint AI with such a broad stroke as it being such a horrible thing. I was in healthcare and can tell you that AI will help researchers cure cancer in the next 10 years. Yeah, right? AI scans of X-rays and MRIs and the level of scrutiny that you're able to attain with something like AI and its ability to process data is insane and will be a part of the future. There is no doubt about it. And I think I don't think anyone would argue that in those cases it's a bad thing, right? And I can see how, with experience in that specific aspect of AI being put to use, you would feel defensive about like people painting it with a broad brush. And I think that's fair. And I agree. I think there are times when people are just like, hey, all AI bad. And I'm like, well, no, it's not. I think in the context of this conversation, which is more related to art, it's a different context. But I agree with you. In that context, I don't think it's a bad thing. I know accountants who use AI to research through the bajillions of pages of stuff so that they can best file for their clients, save them money, save the firm time, win, 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 right? Like that works. But I also know that firms are replacing associate level, like entry level accountants with AI because of how much AI can do. And that's dumb because, in my opinion, because in the next some period of time, you will then have no experienced people. You're relying on AI to then become as experienced as a manager in 3 to 5 years. And I don't think that's realistically attainable. And even if it is, there was a great quote that I read. It's famous. I'm sure someone will know who said it. But it's that, and it's old. It's pre-AI level quote, which is a computer should never be allowed to make a management decision because a computer cannot be held accountable. I think that's super powerful. It's something that I take with me a lot because I feel the same way about AI. If AI is going to make a decision, it cannot be held accountable. You as the firm are then held accountable, or as whomever are then held accountable. But like, are you though? Right? I don't know. I think that's a whole nother level of like, that's a context when I don't think it works. And I think people are being very nearsighted with their approach there in a lot of specific ways. Let's see. If AI can help get my guitar to me faster, then by all means use AI. Yeah, we don't for getting your guitar to you any faster. So while I do appreciate that, not an option. We are not that company. Oh man, when I got my first tattoo at 18, people for sure looked at me funny. Yeah, I'm glad somebody gets it. And skinny jeans, yep. Kai says, I just hope that when AI filters down in 15 years, people will finally stop turning themselves into cartoon characters. Yeah, I think if it wasn't for purported and very likely environmental impacts, I would have no problem with that. I think it's hilarious. But the fact that, yeah, I mean, like, again, you're back to the, is AI worth using as an educational tool if there are these other negative impacts? If that AI, in some way, shape, or form, whether it's the people who create it, the systems that keep it running, or whatever, are harming other things, is it okay to use it for the little things? Right? You know, it's a tough one. It's like saying you expect someone to be politically informed on every possible issue. It doesn't happen. No one alive has the time for that. So you have to pick and choose, right? Back to that comfortability threshold. Kind of an interesting perspective, though. Kenny says the problem is then taking ownership of said AI prompt. Yeah, which you can't do, right? Like, you didn't do the work. You can say, oh, it was my prompt, but you didn't do it. You know, I like to use my writer's example earlier. I'm not against people using AI to help them like spell check something or pump out a decent paragraph or whatever. But when someone tells me, oh yeah, I used AI to put this together, I'm like, ew. Right? Like it doesn't mean that the thing isn't cool. It just means that it is less valuable to me at that point. Less impressive, less anything, less of that to me. Doesn't mean it's bad. Doesn't mean I'm saying ew because I don't like the person or I don't like what they did with it. It's more like, oh, I thought you did this really cool thing and now I realize that you didn't. And like, that's kind of an icky feeling, in my opinion. Brian says modern art has always had critics. Abstract and impressionistic art has been scrutinized throughout history. Van Gogh was considered a terrible artist in his era. Fair point. Absolutely. To that end, I'm going to throw myself a bone. Well, not a bone. I'm going to risk ostracizing myself here by saying, new Avenged Sevenfold EP. People are freaking out about it on the internet. I think it's pretty good. I've always liked Avenged Sevenfold. People who rip on them, you know, it is a bit cringe. It is a bit butt rock at times. That's all true. No one's going to deny that if they have half a brain. But specifically in regards to the new EP, I think it's pretty sick. And I know that they're recording those things for real. I know that Bruce Wackerman is a good enough drummer to do that. I know that even though the vocals are auto-tuned, that Shadows can sing that stuff. I know that even though the guitars don't sound like guitars, they are guitars, and Gates is actually playing that stuff. Like, right? The music wasn't created by AI. It was just created oddly. To your point, Brian, about things being seen as weird. And I thought Shadows was great when they asked him about it. And he was like, yeah, people hated City of Evil when it came out. And now it's like a bona fide classic, a gateway record for millions of listeners, including myself, right? I think it's an interesting point. Cody Jimenez. I don't mean to put you on the spot, dude, but I would be curious what you think. Cody is an amazing artist and an amazing dude as well. Shout out, Cody. Thanks for hopping into the chat. 100% with you. Yeah. And I'm assuming you're agreeing with Brian. And that's true, right? Like, there are instances when using AI to do things that you could not normally do, using it as a legitimate tool to like push something, I don't think is an objectively bad thing. I think it's the intent behind it that matters a lot. And then how you contextualize it when you release it into the world, what you make it or don't make it. I think those things matter a lot in that case, in all those cases. Mario says Twitch just caused a shitstorm by implementing AI training. Could be used on all streamer content. The mistake they made was the opinion was defaulted. You had to manually opt out. Yep. I mean, we're getting into, or manually opt in. We're getting into tech bro talk, which is that the fact that people just like turn this shit on is annoying. You should like not be forced to do these things, right? And you should be notified when it happens. And I think that's a mistake that many tech companies have made. Going back to Apple putting U2 on your playlist without you asking for it, people freaked out about that. Imagine, right? Like look back on that and be like, wow, people were mad that one of the greatest bands of all time had a song, subjective, but I think they are, had a song put on there. You got free music. You got free music, and people were mad about it. Compare that to now, where people are like, oh yeah, AI, whatever. And it's like, yo, you're like, what? There are some funky parallels there. Kai says, YouTube suggested I use their AI thumbnails. It mocked up my face to a degree of accuracy that was able to fool me and everyone I know. I didn't use it for what it's worth. That's an interesting one. If you don't know Rhett Shull, look him up. I think he's a great content creator. I think some of his stuff is a little cringe, but I think he's a sick guitarist, a really nice guy when I met him. And his channel's amazing. And oh, look, right, sorry, Brian just said, Rhett Shull had his entire YouTube channel essentially recreated with AI. That's what I was going to say. And like that to me, Google, who owns YouTube, Rhett should have been able, and every creator should have been able to sue the pants off them. You're modifying someone's art. Like that's a whole nother level of bullshit, just absolute belligerent behavior that I can't believe someone was like, yeah, this is a good idea. Because that is the worst. And it proves that it's one case that proves in that specific case, they were doing it intentionally because by using AI thumbnails, they know that it holds your attention longer. Like these things have been proven. They have had to say this in court when they have been sued. And like, that's disgusting, frankly, right? It's horrible. I was so bummed for Rhett when that video came out, but I was so stoked that he put it out because I was like, man, he took the time to look into all this, to see these things, to post about it, and to prove that they did that to his stuff. Like, that's horrible. I don't know how they weren't sued into the ground for that. I guess there's some language in the YouTube agreement that says that anything you upload is like their property or something. It might still be your IP, but I guess they can just modify it without talking to you about it. Like, that's an example of me looking at something and being like, wow, that's disgusting. Like, what a horrible decision and a horrible way to use AI, right? That's like bottom of the barrel trash. Anyway, before I keep shit talking them, even though they deserve it. Tyler says, Brian says, I kind of side with Phil McKnight on that one. Recreating Rhett's channel is kind of a stretch here. So not a big Phil McKnight fan. Don't like the way that he stokes stuff. Don't care for a lot of his opinions, if I'm honest. I have not watched that video. I do not know what he said. But Dylan, yo, thanks for popping in and saying what's up. You came in on a hell of a conversation. I don't particularly care for Phil's channel or for a lot of what he has to say. No disrespect to him as like a person or a creator, but I'm not into that kind of content and people who do that stuff, so I don't watch it. But I don't think recreating Rhett's channel is a stretch, in my opinion, because if you wrote a song and someone took that song and changed it and was like, yeah, this is Tyler's song, he did this. Right? Like you did something artistic, you created art, and it was then modified without your opinion, directly and intentionally. Like, I think that's fucked. Like, I think that's really, really bad. Just my opinion. But yeah, kind of gross. Medina says, right, it shows that it's genuine. See, Jake, you can tell if if a band uses AI for a flyer or if they put time into it with paint, if that makes sense. I mean, yeah, I see your point. I still don't think it's fair that people put that on other people. I don't think it's fair that a company says, oh, you should be able to tell the difference. We're just going to implement it everywhere. You'll have no idea what's real or fake. Like, you'll just have to figure it out on your own. There was a great example recently. Shout out to my UK homies. There was a great example recently, and my 40K nerds who I know are in the chat. There was a piece of art released in the new 40K drops for 11th edition, and a Space Marine had 6 fingers. And people were like, oh my God, it's AI. And Games Workshop was literally like, absolutely not. Like, this is just an artist's interpretation. This is what happened. Here's the original sketch. And I'm like, okay, is that kind of weird because a company like Games Workshop has sort of a weird past with some things? But one thing they've always done is highlighted artists in their work. So I'm more inclined to believe them than I might be someone who's not. But the fact that I even have to wonder about that sucks. Like the fact that it's created an environment where I can't trust people's art, where I can't trust what I see. I don't know. Like, that just sucks, right? And if that's the world we live in, fine. But that sucks. So I get your point, Medina, again, and I appreciate you coming full circle, but I don't agree because I don't think people can tell the difference. I kind of hate the AI flyer theory, Ty said. We are all in our 40s and our parents. Bars pay our bands like a crappy $600 total. Yeah, that's true. And if an AI flyer brings more people in the door and makes you a little bit more money, like, is that the worst thing in the world? No. But again, like I said earlier, I don't think there's anything wrong with using AI to make a flyer. Most people don't have the tools to do it. I just don't think it's as good as someone doing it themselves, even if it's a shitty flyer in paint. So I think that's that comfortability threshold thing again. We are busy and can't hire someone to... Oops, I keep messing the chat up, man. Oh my God, there are so many. I love this, guys. We may have a long live stream today. I'm so stoked. Thank you, everyone, for commenting. I know this is not an easy conversation to have, but I really appreciate everyone's opinions. I just want you to know that. Says it's great for creating home stuff. Turns out the band even said it was created with AI. It was just general lyrics, no emotion. If that makes sense, that's what I meant by genuine. Yeah. No, I get it. Using AI to fill gaps is a completely valid use for it. No different than integrating tools within programs to automate processes. I agree. I think, like we said earlier, as long as the context is there, I don't think anyone would say that AI to help cure cancer, to help do research, to help perform a meta-analysis, or I don't think anyone's going to say those things are bad. And if you do, it's because you think AI as a whole is bad, which there is a case to be made for that. But I also think that there are good uses for it, my personal opinion. I don't think it's fair to say it's all bad. I think, unfortunately, the intent behind it for everyone who is pushing AI as a thing is often really grimy and shitty. And that's unfortunate because you have to take the good with the bad at that point. But isn't that kind of everything? I don't know. Again, no black and white. There's no right or wrong answer here. But I do think that's interesting. Ryan says, I think Rhett's channel was heavily pulled from to create the character and setting, but it isn't the most egregious use of AI in the creator sphere. True. Kai says ChatGPT has some abhorrent applications, but using it to cross-reference the Axe Effects manual with a MIDI controller manual genuinely saved me hours. Yeah, I think that's an example of a perfectly legitimate way to use AI. Assuming you're using it, I think that makes sense. Gianluca says, I recently found out this iPhone app I've used since 2019 can separate the left and right tracks on any MP3 you choose from your files. It has helped me immensely for learning Chan songs. Yeah, first off, Chan rules, shout out. And two, yeah, again, using AI to break a track into stems, as long as you then aren't taking those stems and doing shitty stuff with it, and I don't mean shitty as in quality, I mean like passing it off as your own or like doing things that get around other things, that's fine, right? I mean, there have been technologies that have done that forever, so why not have AI do it? Like, I get it. It's just like when Tim was blowing up with the Polyphia people thought he was faking it. Yeah, right? That's a very real point. I don't consider that cheating because it's just helping me learn the songs more quickly. Yeah, I'd agree with you. Cody says, I plan on never using it. I don't like the idea of farming out ideas, especially visually, on not using the muscle of trying and failing. Necessary to grow, even if it's uncomfortable. Completely agree. I also think this feeds my point earlier about to sort of connect the more artistic side with the more technical side. I spoke earlier about companies and firms that are eliminating low-level employees with AI. And it's interesting because in some years' time, they will then not have employees who can make the decisions on what AI is doing because no one is getting trained anymore. And I think that applies to this sort of thing as well. No artist succeeds their first go, right? Like you have to your point, try and fail. It's uncomfortable. It sucks. Nobody likes to suck. But that's part of the journey, right? And I think that's valuable. It humanizes the experience. It takes something that has tradition and makes you a part of the tradition, which I think is amazing as a thing, even if you suck at it. I've been to so many jams where people show up and are not good at what they do, but like, fuck yeah, man, you showed up. That's awesome. You showed up to play the triangle. You showed up to play a blues jam knowing 3 notes, but you made every note count. And you played some wrong notes. Who cares? Like, you wrote a song that I'm sure every critic on the planet would be like, nah. But the fact that you did it is sick. Like, you should be, you created something. That's amazing. So I agree with you. Kai says, while we're at it, AI generated thumbnails can get in the bin too. I agree, personally. I don't like them. When I see them, those are videos that I don't watch, frankly. And there are channels that I really like that do it, and I don't watch them because I think it's gross. The key point is AI, which isn't actually AI. As we know, it is a tool, not the be-all, end-all. I mean, I think that's true, right? It's not literally artificial intelligence, and it isn't the be-all, end-all. That is also true. I don't think that's the key point, though. In the broader conversation, it's a fair perspective to say that it is a tool to fill the gaps and that's it. But that isn't it. That isn't the only thing people use it for. So within that very specific context, I agree with you. But in other contexts, I don't. Again, just my opinion. And I love you, Dave. I'm not trying to shit talk you. Just, you know. Medina says, right, it shows that it's genuine. Oh, yeah. Wow. This chat has done something weird. It's like duplicating comments. Bar can't hire someone to make a flyer. Tyler says, yeah, no, I mean, I get it. We've done the flyer thing. The issue with AI flyers, Kai says, is that you're then pretending to be more professional than you are. Make a DIY flyer and people will know what to expect at a DIY show. Then Tyler says, if you saw my AI flyers, you would not immediately think I'm a professional. That's fair. But again, I would say that puts it on the person to know the difference. And I think that's kind of, I'm not stoked about that. Again, making an AI flyer, I don't have a problem with that. I just don't, I think it devalues that part of what you do to a certain extent. I'm not saying it's good or bad. In my opinion, that's what it does. And to be fair, I also don't think that doing something like that is you pretending to be more professional than you are, to Kai's point. I think the intent matters, right? If your intent is to appear more professional than you are, then you're a piece of shit, frankly. If you're in, probably anyway, if in the artistic sphere in this specific case, but if your intent is to fill a gap and try and create something cool that makes your band look cool and like it works, I think that's less bad, to use the word bad. Kenny says AI art is not art, period. Sorry. If you care about your image or your band or your business, pay someone to do the things you can't. You'll feel better as a person and you'll also stand out. I mean, for what it's worth, I agree with you on the whole. You know, I don't think that AI art is art. I think that some people can't afford to pay people, even if you're using like Fiverr or something. So I again, plugging a gap with it, not the same thing as being a shitty person or a shitty artist, in my opinion. Doesn't mean I would do it, because I absolutely would not. but I think there's a gray area there, and there is some wiggle room. Just my opinion, though. Dave says AI doesn't process anything. It's an algorithm. It can't think. It's only iterative based on piles of data. If that data is flawed, the result will also be flawed. Yeah, it's a fair point. Again, I think all of this can be made into semantics, and I think you can marginalize any aspect of it. But I don't think that accurately conveys the big picture of AI. Although in some cases, I agree with you. Totally agree. Tyler says, wherever y'all are playing that your band is making enough to pay a graphic designer, hit me up. Fair point. I agree. Chat keeps freaking out on me. Ty says, I live near Jake and just got to do some research, my man. Yeah. I mean, again, you could pay someone on Fiverr $5 to do it, but not everyone has $5. I don't think it's fair to say that someone should just pay for it, right? Like, I don't agree with that. But I also don't think that AI flyers are as good as shitty DIY flyers. So I think both can be true, and I think both are true, in my opinion. Medina says, I will say there's a ton of local graphic artists, your band, that would much rather get paid doing something than watching their homies use AI. Yeah, I agree. I think if everyone had infinite money or infinite time or whatever, they would just do it. But the reality is people don't. So how do you, again, that comfortability threshold, how do you justify those decisions? Everyone has a different opinion. And they're not, some of them I would say are pretty close to wrong, but many of them are not, even if you don't agree, even if I don't agree. Kai says, I haven't gigged in a while, but I was making my band's posters at 14 after an hour of YouTube research and a free Photoshop alternative. Fair point. And that, for what it's worth, that would be my perspective, is I could fake it till I make it in that place. Can everyone? Maybe not. At that point, is there a difference between paying someone to do it using AI versus you doing it yourself? Right? I mean, again, the semantic argument could go on literally forever. But I agree. I think doing it yourself will always have more value. Now, it doesn't mean that it's bad to have someone else do it. And if that someone else is AI, I still don't think that makes it bad. I just don't have the same appreciation for that. Ty says, hell, now I could just spend 5 hours in Photoshop making a flyer just to appease the haters, and I would get accused of using AI anyway. Yeah, right? I mean, that's the world we live in. And I think arguably that's part of the problem, because by using it, and when I say you, I don't mean you, Ty. I just mean when people use AI to do those things, people then have a harder time separating those things. And that's unfortunate, because yes, it's a good tool, but yes, it also kind of just makes it worse in terms of like the general aspect. So again, comfortability threshold. Man, Brian, I should start paying you every time I say that. Holy moly. Between you and Gianluca with context, you guys have earned it. Sad Riffs, big hate to Gen AI and big love to Jake. My boy. I hated you two after that. Haha, great analogy. Shout out to Human Art. Yeah, man, that's the vibe, right? Like, everyone thought that was gross. But like, at the time, I mean, I was a U2 fan. So I've always been a U2 fan, so like, I didn't care. But at the same time, I get why anyone would be like, I don't want this. Because in the same way that I don't want bloatware on my phone, like, don't put something on my stuff that I don't ask for or want. I feel that way about those things. And I understood why people felt that way about U2. I do. Even though I love them as a band and still love them as a band. Ryan White. What's up, Ryan? Thanks for dropping in. Where do you draw the line? The latest amp modeling hotness is all about neural amp modeler. AI is used in NAMM, which can't be argued if those are using AI to copy someone's IP, the amp. I think that's an interesting point. There's a Quad Mini right there that I use all the time. There's a Quad Cortex and another Quad Mini right there. There's a Quad Nano right there. Where is the line, right? I would argue in my opinion, in that specific example, in the same way that I use the quad cortex, but I never miss a chance to shout out the OGs, I think that's a step in the right direction, right? If you're using AI to create something, I think being self-aware enough to acknowledge it is kind of like the first step. In the same way that like I take every chance to be like, yeah, I'm playing the QC. It's my Mesa JP2C captures from the Mesa JP2C that I owned, or I try and balance it out by playing analog gear. I do what I can to make it work because that's a comfortability threshold. Everyone's going to be at a different place. To me, it's icky when people make it the thing. Like if Neural was advertising it as their amp, I'd be like, piss off. Don't do that. But they also don't do that. And in the same way that modelers have always been seen as sort of anti-analog, you can go back and watch our live stream on analog versus digital for my opinion and Joe's opinion. He's in that stream. But the reality is it's different strokes for different folks. Horses for courses, chalk and cheese, to use a whole bunch of UK idioms. It's not really the same thing, right? Like you're using one for the other, I think you can do without being a jackass. I think you just have to acknowledge where it comes from, be the person who understands that, make that stuff known. People who are like, modelers should have to pay the OGs. I don't even disagree with them, frankly. You are modeling tones from something else. Even if you're doing like the fractal thing where you have a million options that you can change that the regular amp can't be changed, that can't be changed on the regular amp, like you're still basing the tone off of something else. I think that's where things like licensing come in. And I don't think there's a right answer, in the same way that you're standing on the shoulders of giants when you write a riff, or when you paint in the style of someone you love, or when you research, medical theory. Like that's all coming from existing stuff. But even if you're not drawing a hard line, the awareness that comes with that, I think, has to be present. And back to companies expecting people to do that, I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's fair to expect people to know the difference. I think companies, whoever's doing this, I think should be honest and upfront about it. Even Neural, to their credit, in their list of modelers and whatever, will say based on this amp. Like it's not just like this is the Neural JP3D. It's like it may not be called Mesa Boogie JP2C, but in the parentheses on the side of it, it says based on the Mesa Boogie JP2C copyright. I think while there is no correct answer, I think that's a pretty fair way to do it most of the time, as long as your intent is behind your self-awareness. Generative AI is where you draw the line. Yeah, personally, in most cases, yes. In most cases, as soon as it's creating something, generating something, I'm like, I don't feel great about this anymore. If you're using it like as a tool, not as a tool. If you're using it to, what's the word I'm looking for? If you're using it to project in a certain way, not always a good thing. Ryan says all AI assisted coding is LLM generative AI. Correct. That's correct. You pay a coder on Fiverr, you pay a legit, like Insano private coder, someone who does it for a living, you pay whatever. That's one option. The other option is you plug it into an LLM and it generates it for you. And like, is that okay? I think it depends on your intent. In my opinion, it depends on your intent. If you as a person can afford to pay someone to write the code for you, you should. In the same way that I believe you should support small businesses. In the same way that I'll go to local restaurants or buy a book from a shop instead of just like buying it from Audible, even though I love Audible, shout out. it's still like I would rather someone in the local community have the money. I would rather someone who really cares about it have the money. But if I don't have the money, that doesn't mean I'm going to go rip the movie off the internet or steal the book or whatever or Napster it. Shout out to Lars, who's still a giant loser, but was right about that. Like, I wouldn't do those things because I think that's crappy. I think that's disingenuous. I think it's shitty intent. I think that's unfortunate. But if I'm using it to plug a gap, that's the example we keep using. It doesn't mean I would do it. It doesn't mean I would do it. And it doesn't mean that I think it's acceptable in every gap as a plug. But in some, I do think it is. And if it's a semantic game of black and white, if it's a semantic game and or turned into something black or white, then I guess we're all just Sith dealing in absolutes, right? Which sucks. So we shouldn't be that. There should be a spectrum, in my opinion, like with everything on the planet, almost everything on the planet. AI has been used for everything forever, down to NPCs and video games, but it shouldn't be used as a bypass for creativity. I think that's a great way to put it, right? This is back to the tool versus creator argument. Using AI as a tool in some contexts, totally fine. Using it to create as a substitute or shortcut, and not the time-saving, decent kind of shortcut. I mean, like the I'm cheating kind of shortcut. Then yeah, in my opinion, that's bad. I wouldn't do it. I don't think it's objectively bad, but subjectively, I would not do it. I think it's gross, and I think something like that has less value than something you create yourself. Machine learning is also not the problem. Accurate. Should be doing my laundry, not my albums. Accurate. Yo, dropping the knowledge. How are you going to support AI calls, for example? Not even American, but seeing police departments use AI to dictate what is or what isn't an emergency is wild. Totally agree. Freaking dropping the knowledge on them. Hell yeah. Kai, I've seen people hitting AI agents on mental health hotlines recently. Yeah, man. Woo. Tough. Real tough. You see arguments about stuff, or arguments slash examples of stuff like that, or of people like falling in love with chatbots and stuff. And it's like, I mean, at some point, it's not the chatbot's fault. But if the chatbot is like expected to do that and has the tools to, like, ooh, right? Just my opinion. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it's a misnomer. Companies have arbitrarily grouped a bunch of complex algorithms to their under the umbrella of AI. It's not AI. That's true. That is true, Dave. Tyler says, you played some wrong notes. Why are you calling me out, man? Hey, I don't think there's been a single live stream where I haven't played a wrong note or a wrong chord or done something stupid on the guitar. So, mistakes are a part of the journey, man. It just is. And I love you, dude. I really do. My man from my home turf. Kenny says, as a graphic designer, he's doxing himself. AI being used to make flyers, presentations, or anything else that corresponds to my job is my worst enemy. That's fair. I think that's part of the subjective aspect, right? Jake, your opinion sucks. Piss off. I get it, right? I mean, like I said earlier, I pride myself on being a good writer. I write the copy for almost everything we do at Balaguer. When I see someone using AI to write copy, I don't like that. Not just because it's part of my job, but because it's something I worked to be good at. That makes me mad. But that isn't objective reality. That's just my opinion based on how it affects me. And as someone who has very famously or infamously said many times, it shouldn't have to happen to you for it to matter to you, I try and remember that when I talk about this, because I totally understand where you're coming from. I really, really do. And I agree. In most cases, well, in my opinion, is that in most cases, those things should be done by people who have spent the time to do them well, learn to do them well. Absolutely. But I also see the other side. Whether I would do it or not is irrelevant. I'm just saying I see both sides of it. It's all good. I like a good debate. My man, Dave, I knew you'd get it. Mario, off topic, but in the last chat, you guys mentioned Carnival. Holy shit, was I missing out? Shout out, Mario. Yeah, Carnival rules. Speaking of people who don't use AI and absolutely rip, I'd love to see them live. I still haven't, but yeah, they're absolutely amazing. Glad you listened to them too. I know Kai was hyping them up too, hyping them up as well. They're very good. Kai says Fiverr's a dead platform now. Everyone on there is using AI. Yeah, it's tough, man. I agree. Dave says I don't have $5. I have real money. Pounds. There you go. Or can I get a 6-pence, bruv? Get that shit out of here. No, I'm just kidding. Shout out to my English homies. Sad riffs. Canva flyers are so much more inviting than AI generated anything, honestly. I agree. Totally agree. Brian says AI as a means to devalue labor and eliminate skill sets from humanity is potentially dangerous. Agree. Technology has often shifted the focus of where human labor is most useful. Agree. AI tries to fully remove it. Also agree. And I think that's a great point when we talk about context, when we talk about regulation, when we talk about the guardrails, like that's the thing, right? Like if all AI does is taking baseline labor and elevating it so that everybody wins, I don't think anyone's going to have a problem with that, but that isn't what it's doing. That's the reality. Perfectly said. Giving Brian a shout out. Yep, agreed. Kai says, use AI to teach you how to do things, not skip the creative process. Agreed. Kenny Blum, AI is a creative tool, no thanks. As a productive tool, I'm okay with. Largely, totally agree. That we can kiss and make up on. The other John Brown, Jake, how are you? What's up, dude? Good to hear from you. Watched your video today, made my vote on your V30 comparison vid. I'm good, man. I hope you're good too. It's good to hear from you. Looking forward to seeing you at Guitar Summit, I hope. Dave says, in other news, my Balaguer is in the sky on its way to me as we speak. Might be a little bit excited. Hell yeah, it is. I know it's in your country, so I hope it arrives. I hope that you love it. I know that it's sick, so shout out. Kai says, tangentially related, but I spent 9 hours making the M captors of my JVM during the heat wave today. Yeah, that'll do it. Again, you know, we're okay using modeled amps, but maybe not having AI flyers. Where do you draw the line, Kai? No, I'm just kidding. You know I love you, dude. And we agree on just about all of this. Dave says, I spent 9 hours just melting in the heat wave. Yeah, y'all are suffering together, for sure. Anthony says, I will say eventually that the evolve of said skill will go away. If companies keep pushing AI, we keep using it. Next thing we'll see is ads in our video games. We already do. Plus microtransactions. Plus cars are now putting ads in their cars, which makes me want to vomit. So I'm glad I drive a frickin' Miata. Get that tech crap out of there, man. I don't dig it. Again, personal opinion, but like, I don't need my car to tell me anything other than my revs, how fast I'm going, how much gas I have. If it's got navigation, cool, I can use that. If it's got heated seats, I'm in for that. I don't know. Get that other crap out. I think it's gross. The safety features are cool, though. I'm here for that, even if I find them annoying sometimes. Kai says, for the next AI stream, we need a big green button on the desk that just shouts, agree. Yeah, exactly. Tyler says, let's get back to the important matter. Can I get an update, please, on my guitar? Not too long. Kai says, now that's something we can all agree on. Hey, if this turns into a pile on about when people are going to get their guitars, I'm shutting the stream down. So you've all been warned. Where's my damn guitar is a sentiment we all carry. That is true. That is true. Man, I've got to say to everyone in the chat, first off, thanks for coming. Second off, thanks for hanging. If you commented, I just got to say, I'm so stoked about this, right? A big part of the reason I wanted to do this is because I think it's important that we talk about this stuff. And with everything going on right now, not just AI in general, but specifically in the music industry, it's worth talking about, even if we disagree, because at least you might hear something you didn't hear before. You might experience a different perspective. There have been huge studies that show that when people get to know other people, like your proximity to a group has an enormous impact on your effort to understand that group and your ability to be self-aware enough not to marginalize someone or something. And having these conversations are like the move, right? And I'm gonna get emotional, legitimately, because this stuff is all so important to me. And we managed not to talk about politics, right, Kai? So don't say anything. But politics, the world, people living and existing and not being treated like crap and not being taken advantage of by companies and not having their resources squandered by governments and blah, 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 blah. Like, that stuff's important. And it's important to me. It's important to Joe. It should be important to everyone, regardless of how much time or effort or money or whatever you can afford to invest. Like, the general welfare of humanity is important, objectively. uh, and this is something that I think is so important and so easily trivialized or marginalized as just something going on in the world, that it's great that we can have these conversations. And I think the part that makes me emotional is not just how I feel about the things themselves, but the fact that you guys and gals and everyone else in the chat can talk about this stuff within the context of Balaguer Guitars, and this chat does not devolve into an absolute train wreck, is something that I am so incredibly proud of. Like, it's one of the things I'm most proud of about Balaguer. It's not just the guitars. Oh, of course, I'm insanely proud of those. It's the community, right? You know, it's people feeling welcome enough to be able to voice an opinion, you know, without being doom and gloom. Where else on the internet are you going to voice an opinion like this and not expect to be absolutely flamed for it? We can disagree. It's okay. Like, that's part of being alive, right? But to have the conversation in this sort of way, man, I wish it existed everywhere. So thank you all for participating and for caring and for just, man, even if you didn't give an opinion, you just said dropping into the chat. Like, we're so lucky. We're so lucky. And we say it, and people on the internet, people would love to point out that they feel like we're being disingenuous, but like, it's amazing. You guys are amazing. Choo choo, Dave says. Hell yeah. Man, I'll stop rambling, but it's so cool. Like, I love you guys. I hope everyone's had a great week. I hope everyone has a great weekend. For all of you that are waiting on guitars, I hope they're done sooner rather than later. Unfortunately, I do not have direct control over that, but I will keep you updated if you're waiting. And I appreciate everyone's opinions. I appreciate everyone being civil and having a good conversation and being amazing. I love you guys so much. You have no idea how good I feel coming out of this conversation. Brian says, have you played a single note since the stream began? I played my quick little 5-minute intro, and that's it. And the rest of it has just been me volume swelling to keep the speaker alive. But I am going to play now. Tomorrow, Jake, party time. Yeah, Kenny is passively fishing for me to mention this, which, gross. No, I'm just kidding. Kenny and I are in a band together called The Man in the Machine, and we will be playing a gig tomorrow at Broken Goblet in Philadelphia, near Philadelphia. Come hang if you're around. Shameless promo. I promise I won't keep doing that. The amazingness that you have all exhibited today is beyond cool. So I am going to riff now. In fact, I'll even tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to kick on my Beatronics Octahive in the fuzz face mode. And I'm going to get a little nasty because I want to. So I hope everyone has a great weekend. I hope everyone thinks about this stuff a little bit. You all seem to, which is so sick. Be self-aware. Be nice. Be good to people. Man, it's hard to be alive right now. But coming together to have these conversations is what's most important, not pointing fingers. Or, even when they deserve it every now and then. I love y'all. Have a great weekend. Talk soon.